When it comes to celebrity couples, their luxurious and glamorous lifestyles often steal the spotlight. But there's another intriguing aspect that never fails to capture attention: the significant age differences between some of these high-profile pairs. While relationships with notable age gaps often spark debates, they can also serve as a source of fascination and inspiration. Curious to know which celebrity duos prove that age is just a number? Let's dive in. Chris Pratt and Katherine Schwarzenegger with 10 years gap. Nick Jonas and Priyanka Chopra with 10 years gap. Billie Eilish and Rutherford with 11 years gap. Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively with 11 years gap. Adam Levine and Behati Prinsloo with 10 years gap. Michael Fassbender and Alicia Vikander with 11 years gap. William H. Macy and Felicity Huffman with 12 years gap. Julius Tenen and Viola Davis with 12 years gap. Beyoncé and Jay-Z with 12 years gap. Brian Austin Green and Megan Fox with 13 years gap. Stephen Moyer and Anna Paquin with 13 years gap. Guy Ritchie and Jackie Ainsley with 13 years gap. Elon Musk and Tallulah Riley with 13 years gap. Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness with 13 years gap. Matthew McConaughey and Camilla Alves with 13 years gap. Scott Disick and Sophia Richie with 15 years gap. Jeffrey Morgan and Hilaire Burton with 16 years gap. Tom Calitz and Heidi Klum with 16 years gap. George Clooney and Amal Clooney with 17 years gap. Eddie Murphy and Paige Butcher with 18 years gap. David Cross and Amber Tamblyn with 19 years gap. Jason Statham and Rosie Whiteley with 20 years gap. Zach Braff and Florence Pugh with 21 years gap. Sylvester Stallone and Jennifer Flavin with 22 years gap. Leonardo DiCaprio and Vittoria Soretti with 22 years gap. Harrison Ford and Callista Flockhart with 22 years gap. Aaron Taylor Johnson and Sam Taylor Johnson with 23 years gap. Bruce Willis and Emma Hemming Willis with 23 years gap. Johnny Depp and Amber Heard with 23 years gap. Donald Trump and Melania Trump with 24 years gap. Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones with 25 years gap. Rupert Murdoch and Jerry Hall with 25 years gap. Alec Baldwin and Hilaria Baldwin with 26 years gap. Rod Stewart and Penny Lancaster with 27 years gap. David Hasselhoff and Haley Roberts with 27 years gap. Jeff Goldblum and Emily Livingston with 28 years gap. Nicolas Cage and Rico Shibata with 32 years gap. Billy Joel and Alexis Roderick with 33 years gap. David Foster and Catherine McPhee with 34 years gap. Mel Gibson and Rosalind Ross with 34 years gap. Richard Gere and Alejandra Silva with 34 years gap. Patrick Stewart and Sonny Oswald with 38 years gap. Dennis Quaid and Laura Savoy with 39 years gap. Mick Jagger and Melanie Hamrick with 44 years gap. Dick Van Dyke and Arlene Silver with 46 years gap. Don McLean and Paris Dillon with 49 years gap. Al Pacino and Noor Al-Fallah with 54 years gap. So what do you think about today's video? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And hey, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a single update on your favorite celebs and those unforgettable Hollywood moments. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time with even more legendary stories from the world of entertainment.